It's almost a bad joke at this point. How many Hollywood remakes and reboots are just so terrible? And a lot of times we get confused why we think they're terrible. Maybe if it's an animation, it has really good artistry and maybe really good voice acting. Same for live action. Maybe it has fantastic acting, a great score, really well done directing, but it just comes off as bad. The question is why? I think I have an answer, and that answer is spite. 'Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side. Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Berry. Welcome to the StudioJake vidcast where I talk about all things pop culture. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and if you're watching on YouTube, ring that little bell to get notifications when I post a new vidcast, and please become a channel member. Alright, so this is your spoiler warning. I am going to be talking about a lot of different film, TV, and comic book franchises in this video, and there will be spoilers to some of them. So this is your warning, but I do hope you stick around and enjoy this video. When I first heard that Disney bought Star Wars, I was very excited. You can go back and look at archived articles on my website, studiojakemedia.com, to see this for yourself. I was ecstatic. I thought it would be a great step forward for Star Wars since George Lucas seemed to be wanting to take a hiatus or at least a long-term break. And I thought, great, Disney, one of the film companies that entertained my childhood. I remember growing up in the Disney Renaissance when films like The Lion King, Aladdin, Treasure Planet, The Emperor's New Groove, a Goofy movie, all were coming out in either theatrical or straight to DVD, which had kind of become a popular marketplace for family entertainment. However, I was a little surprised by The Force Awakens. I was scratching my head. Now, if you read my review of The Force Awakens, I didn't necessarily think it was a bad film, but I was just kind of shocked by it. For one thing, Rey came off as very Mary Sue-ish. She was portrayed well by Daisy Ridley, but the writing just gave her a pass at everything, whereas characters like Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and even Princess Leia had to work for what they got. They had to earn their wins. But Rey seemed to just get them from just stumbling on Luke's old lightsaber to just how to fix the Millennium Falcon to all of a sudden being an expert in lightsaber combat despite having no combat experience other than waving her little spear around on Jakku. How did this all come together? And of course, The Force Awakens culminated in the disastrous death of Han Solo. But I was willing to bite my tongue and give it another chance. But then came The Last Jedi, where I saw one of my childhood heroes, Luke Skywalker, become something that he wasn't. He was a sad sack. He was depressed. He wasn't a hero anymore. He had abandoned the fight and had even tried to slay his own nephew. This wasn't the Luke Skywalker I grew up with. And then I started to rethink The Force Awakens. Han Solo abandons his wife after his son turns to the dark side. He becomes a deadbeat dad just wandering through space in the Millennium Falcon. Yeah, that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. As a matter of fact, it ruined completely the rise of Skywalker for me. I was stunned to see a descendant of Palpatine just randomly change her name to Skywalker and then take over the new Jedi Order. It was a disaster in the making. And when people were asked about this, it seemed to be that the writers and the producers over at Star Wars showed their cards for what they were. They don't care about the fans. They wanted to tell Star Wars their way, not the classic way that George Lucas told it. They wanted to do it their own bitter way. They wanted to put down those old, straight white male characters to uplift a Mary Sue self insert character from the person who took over Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy. But it was not just Star Wars that was bitten by this bug. Some people call it identity politics. Some call it wokeism. I certainly have. I've called it where I've seen it. But I think another thing is in play here, and that is spite. Another example of this is the Mindy Kaling remake of Velma. What a disaster. Right from the beginning, you hear narration from Velma where she says, "This isn't about this isn't about that, this isn't about Fred, this is about me." Fans of Scooby Doo like those other characters. They like Fred, they like Daphne, they like Shaggy, and they certainly like Scooby Doo. But in this show, Scooby Doo was nowhere to be found. Velma was now a frumpy, no good, backstabbing, blithering, self righteous, self insert character for Mindy Kaling. Daphne was now race swapped and made into a lesbian for some reason. Shaggy had been race swapped as well, made into a simp character, sort of the typical straight friend who's in love with the girl. They also showed a lot of racial stereotypes, like whenever Velma has to pretend a baby is hers and Norville, as he's called in the show, he abandons her. What? That's a racial stereotype. And then, of course, the worst damage was done to Fred. In the original Scooby Doo shows, he was seen as their backbone. He was their strength. He was their big uniter. Now, that didn't make him better than everyone else. That just is how he identified the van belonged to him. And he drove it around with his four friends and their lovable Great Dane to solve mysteries, but not in Velma. In Velma, all of these characters, their worst attributes are exaggerated, including Velma's, which was very weird. But you were supposed to like Velma, but for some reason hate Daphne, Norville, and Fred. But you're supposed to be given the idea that Velma is the ones who unite them. When in fact, Mindy Kaling, all she did was put herself in Velma. She just does the same thing over and over again. Now, what's interesting about this is they make it clear that they hate the fans of Scooby Doo. There's an episode where Norville observes some other teenagers who are, let's just say, using illegal substances to get a little droopy. And he makes a comment about it, and Velma says, "Is that codes for adults who still watch cartoons?" Wait a minute. That's what this show is. It's a show for adults who are fans of the old Scooby Doo's who grew up watching them. Now, I grew up watching What's New Scooby Doo. That was my show. But through other venues, I was able to watch Scooby Doo, Where Are You? And even older iterations of the show. And so I felt incredibly insulted by this. And yes, it was made to take a stab at me. Let's also take a look at Kevin Smith's remake of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. In the first episode, He-Man is quickly dispatched of, and his sword has been broken in two and it's disappeared and all of this stuff. Well, who then becomes the new character? Tila. And then it's shown that her only weakness is herself. They removed He-Man from the title of his own show. So the show was originally He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. This was true of the 2000s remake. And they changed the name to Masters of the Universe Revelations. And of course, they had a sequel right after that. And I heard the sequel tried to fix the problems of the first show. No one cared at that point. In fact, they go out of their way to show you that He-Man is not the hero you thought he was. He was a jealous, cynical character who should have deferred to Tila, who, whenever she becomes the new priestess of Castle Grayskull, she's allowed to break the rules. Now, her mother wasn't the original priestess. She was bound by Castle Grayskull. But Tila, for some reason, just because she's awesome, gets to break this rule, and that defeats the whole purpose of her character. It's absolutely ridiculous. And we also can look at other projects. I can go on and on. We can talk about Marvel Comics refusing to put Peter Parker back with Mary Jane, and even putting her with a character who resembles his creator, his comic book creator, which is really creepy. We see this in Batman Caped Crusader, where Harley Quinn, she's no longer a part of the Joker story. She is now her own, and she wears a mockery of her old costume, and she's race swapped, and she's now a lesbian. It just seems like, and in fact, Bruce Timm is even rumored to have said, "Oh, we're going to make all those neckbeards angry," or something along those lines. It is all made from spite. If Hollywood really wants to win back audiences to their streaming services, to their films, to their comic books, they need to stop mocking their fans blatantly on their shows. They need to start recognizing that these are the people who put butts in seats. And no matter the accolades that they win, no matter which way the critics go. It is up to the fans. And if you want proof of this, look at the Sonic the Hedgehog trilogy. If you look at the first film, they made Sonic a parody of himself, but then they delayed the film, did a complete redesign, and now the fans reward that franchise. Look at the Godzilla franchise. Why do you think Godzilla, Kong Skull Island, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla Kong, and so on, why do you think these movies do well? It's because they don't spite their fans. They know the fans just want to watch a giant lizard and a giant gorilla punch each other. That's all they want. They want to go to see a Godzilla movie to watch Godzilla smash. Yes, it's that simple. Same with Godzilla Minus One. That movie did bonkers at the box office in Japan and in the United States and across the world because fans of Godzilla saw the love and appreciation that went into making that movie. If Hollywood really wants to put butts back in the seats, they need to stop the spite. They need to stop insulting fans and viewers and audiences and make those franchises special again. Enough of the self inserts, enough of the identity politics, enough of the spite. This is, in fact, key. And if Hollywood was smart, they would listen and watch this video. Thank you so much for watching today. If you liked that video, be sure to give it a like, share it out to all your friends, leave me a comment. Do you agree or disagree? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. If you would like, please subscribe to the channel by clicking on that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, ring that little bell so you get notifications when I post a new vidcast, and become a channel member to help support the channel. You can also support by checking out my locals community. The link is in the description of the video. You can sign up for a monthly subscription or send my articles tips. Not to mention, check out my website where I have even more articles on this regarding film, television, video games, anime, and so much more. You're not going to want to miss it. Another way you can support me is by purchasing one or all four of my books. They're written out of love for my readers, not out of spite for people who do. I promise you will love all of these. Get one or all four at Amazon.com. Leave me a 5-star review. It really helps out small indie creators like myself. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.